Climate change, the effect on the marine and coastal environments. Within this documentary, we will be exploring what climate change is, what effects it could cause on people, place, and profit, major effects on coastal and marine ecosystems in Australia and other countries, so by the end we can make our own judgment on what we believe in, do we think it's a myth or a reality. What is climate change? The definition of climate change is defined as the changing of long-term patterns in our weather. In this first picture, it highlights how sunlight enters the earth and is released, but also that it is trapped too. Natural factors hold this heat, but it states extra heat is held from human activity or the greenhouse gas. This image shows a map of Australia and its normal climate areas, highlighting a range of different areas that exist within our country. What's the effect on the marine and coastal environments in Australia and other countries? The ocean links closely to climate change from the relation of the atmosphere and hydrosphere from the ocean's high capacity of retaining heat. This close relationship means that atmospheric carbon dioxide causes a rise in carbon dioxide in the oceans. This large quantities causes a reaction of water plus carbon dioxide to equal carbonic acid and is more acidic from the increase of this acid. This link of carbon dioxide relates closely to global warming, which links to climate change. Before the industrial revolution of fossil fuels, the amount of carbon dioxide, which is a major greenhouse gas, was at concentrations around 200 to 300 parts per million. But after the revolution, the concentration is now around 392 parts per million. This rise will continue by 0.5% every year, and by 2050, we could reach about 450 parts per million. In the last 150 years, testing of ice cores and tree rings shows a rise of temperature corresponding to the carbon dioxide levels rising. These rises in temperature then pose subsequent impact towards our marine species and their habitats. Aquatic invasive species can result in the loss of biodiversity, altering native habitats and chemistry of the water, and are more benefited from the climate change than what native species are. These invasive species create competition between native species and result in the reduction of previous resources that native species need to survive that are not benefited through climate change. This clip shows a rock pool ecosystem. If an invasive species or climate change was to happen, it could alter how it looks and what exists within it. A big contributor that may alter natural flow of great oceans is the ocean conveyor belt system. By looking at this picture, it shows movement of water as it sinks and rises. When water cools, it then becomes more salty and denser, so our deep ocean currents are more salt potent. If this major system were to stop or alter, the effects of alterations in marine climates would be detrimental. Climate change has strengthened the East Australian current, which moves down the east coast, driving many marine species to seek colder waters further south. The CSIRO's observations have shown that the East Australian current has strengthened and extended more and more south in the last 60 years. They state this is a result of wind patterns changing as a result of ozone layer in depletion and increase of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Another cause of the ocean's climate to alter is the El Nino effect. This is when ocean waters warm from a result of weakening of cold upwells. This effect results in eutrophication decrease and lower biodiversity from death or migration. The El Nino effect then causes a global climate effect on the atmospheric circulation, changing weather conditions. For example, rain follows warm waters east in an El Nino event that causes flooding and high precipitation in areas like Peru, and drought and fire for Australia. Climate change and global warming. If they are both to happen, sea level rise is one dramatic effect. The use of models to predict this rise to be around 20 to 40 centimeters. 50 million plus people could become vulnerable. Island nations are threatened, and coastal erosion and wave damage could be a consequence. Coastal erosion is expensive to deal with and has high risks involved upon people and homes. The cause of sea level rise comes from glacier ice melting in areas like the Switzerland Alps, compared to Australia that has no glaciers. By the rise of sea level, it could destroy habitats and make life harder for humanity. High costs to combat the change, decrease the biodiversity, and ways of lives. The effects upon biodiversity are costly consequences predicted to happen. Tropical and subtropical fish species are changing their range and heading more and more south. These species will start to breed in southern waters, creating competition to other biodiversities. Estuaries will reduce from rainfall and river flow reductions in Australia.
Take a climate model and to put in the various factors. And what we can see with this green curve here is a climate model that includes just these natural factors. So this is when volcanoes go off and the output from the sun. And you can see that the green curve can reproduce reasonably well this mid-century warming. So up to this point, you could reasonably argue climate variation can be explained by natural factors. But as we move on, we can see that's no longer true as you get to the latter part of the 20th century. From about 1970 onwards here, you can see the red curve, the observed temperatures, and the green curve really beginning to diverge. And the question again is, what caused this recent warming? So we run the model again and we include human factors. Particularly we include the greenhouse effect, mostly from carbon dioxide that comes from fossil fuel burning. And then we get this yellow curve, and we can see, as well as reproducing the mid-century warming, we get this recent rather rapid warming reproduced. And that tells us two things. One is that the model looks realistic, it looks like the real world, and the second thing, the model tells us that this recent warming is due to human beings.
The effects of climate change will affect everyone, even if climate change is a myth. Should we take the risk of not acting? Wouldn't it be better to say we acted and were wrong, or we acted and was right, compared to we didn't act and we were wrong, and caused more issues that are costly and irreparable? The facts are there. It's everyone's own judgment to make their own choice. Is this a myth, or is this actual reality?